Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Chorus Girl Quilting, where it's what I'm working on Wednesday. We're back in Kansas, and so today was kind of a catch-up day for projects and getting unpacked and all that. So first off, I'll catch you up on the Something Fishy quilt. Right before we left to come home, I was able to finish the small perch block that I was working on during that week. It turned out super cute. So I'm now a third of the way through the blocks on that quilt, and we'll continue to work on that. And again, later on, I'll give you some more insider scoop on foundation paper piecing. The other thing that I did while I was down there was cut a little block for, it's going to be on the back of a quilt that I'm gifting. And it's for a grown-up, but this grown-up likes to wear the long onesie pajama things just to kind of lounge around in. So I decided I was going to make this quilt right here. It's called Onesies Funsies by Art East Quilting Company. The original is actually a baby size quilt. So I thought, oh, hey, that'll be fun. I'll just make one with double the amount of blocks. So there would be 12 of these little onesie people in it. And I got the pattern and I started reading it and I went, no, I am not going to make a whole bunch of these blocks. The pattern is pretty involved. They're not hard patterns. I've done several of their quilt patterns before, and they can be pretty straightforward if the blocks are all the same. But because these are all different, but they have some of the same components, the little booklet, and I'm sure it's to save paper, but it gets really involved and there's a lot of work in just trying to figure out what I'm supposed to cut when and which goes where, and does this go on the bunny or does this go on the bear? So I decided to make one bunny block, and I'm going to incorporate it into the back of the quilt and work my quilt label into that block. It's a large block, and I'm going to try to make it look like the bunny is holding the label. So when I get that finished, I'll show it off there. But that's one little project that's coming up. And then we're still working on the pixel quilt. I did 3 blocks today, and starting on the 7th row of the quilt. And back here I have this is half of the quilt now, and it's all sewn together. Cool story about the gal that designed the software for this and does her own pixel quilting. Most of hers are portraits of people, and she again, her name is Dee Bushrod. She is British and lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And for the World Cup games here in Kansas City, I guess it was. We don't follow the World Cup around here. We're not soccer fans, but Kansas City hosted games here, and the last game that was in Kansas City, her team was playing. So England was playing, and she is connected to a little quilt shop in south of the Kansas City area called the Quilted Cow, and she got with the owner there, but she'd made a portrait quilt of one of England's players, Harry Kane, and she was trying to get the word out so she could come to Kansas City and try to get that quilt to him. You can kind of Google Dee Bushrod, Harry Kane, or quilter. Quilter makes a soccer quilt, whatever, and find some of the news stories about that. I haven't seen any updates as to whether she actually got it to him or to team representatives or not, but that's just kind of a cool side story to this. So we're continuing work on that, and I talked about catching up and UFOs and creative avoidance in my little teaser for this video. And so I'm going to start back up on a UFO, which for those of you who are not quilters, it's not about aliens. It actually stands for unfinished objects. If you want to be more positive about it, you could call them WIPs, which is work in progress. But either way, it's something that we refer to in quilting world. They're projects that we've been working on. They might get set aside. I guess if you wanted to define it, this is a work in progress. What I'm going to talk about now is an unfinished object. I started this, I want to say I started it last spring, a year ago in May. It's not a block of the month. It's called a template of the month club. And what I did is I signed up to get this pattern. It's called Pick a Petal by Jen Kingwell. And what happened was I would get a pattern and the templates to make all of these sets of blocks each month. Jen Kingwell is known for these very colorful, scrappy quilts, and she doesn't really spend a lot of time coordinating and all of that. She just plays with it. Clashy in her, she has said some things like clashy fabric, she doesn't care. It all works, and it truly does. And she does design fabrics that you can use for these quilts, but if you want to use your own scraps and do your own thing, that makes it even more fun. But this is one of the templates that came in the package, and it makes a little wedge that I'll show you here in a second. But the cool thing about her quilts, almost all of the quilting she does is by hand. She does do some machine stitching, but she sews a lot of her quilts by hand, and she appliques. She does a lot of applique, of course, by hand, and she quilts a lot of her quilts by hand. So this is the center kind of set of blocks here with this center medallion. And I did a lot of fussy cutting for these, because what you do is use that template to trace around, on your fabric, and you can see through them, so you can see what fits inside the actual part of the fabric that's going to show. You have to trace these templates, and then there is the 1/4 inch line is actually etched into it, and you mark points where you join everything up. But I did do, and this little wedge is actually in this little fan here. This is what that looks like right there. And you can see I did some fussy cutting in these diamond pieces with the girls here and the beehive, and then I went on to do fussy cutting when I was making these blocks that go around. Like this one says way out yonder. Jen Kingwell is Australian. I do not know from which part of Australia. And you can find videos of her, everywhere in the quilting world. And she's really fun to watch. Really, really low key, laid back, seems like in her videos. But so this is a UFO of mine. I set it aside because I had other projects I had to work on. But I'm hand sewing this. So I was doing it originally so I had something to do while I was watching TV. And I just kind of set it aside because there is a part of this pattern that requires me to do applique and embroidery, and that scares me. But I'm trying to be brave. It's hard to see on this picture, but all through this kind of white band, there's little flowers and pieces of fruit and things all appliqued on, and then she just added all of this cute little embroidery all through there, and that scares me. So I practice creative avoidance with that. I have all the blocks made that those are supposed to go, that part is supposed to attach to. And these blocks here are the only ones that I actually sewed together by machine, and she puts that in her instructions. I will assemble the quilt on the machine as well, just because that feels a little more sturdy to me. But so far, it's been really fun to stitch all of these blocks. And so I just got to be brave and start working on the little applique parts and figure out what I might want to embroider in there. It doesn't have to be what she puts in her pattern. She's very, do whatever you want. So that's my UFO and creative avoidance. What my goal is, a few years back, and we will do a show and tell Sunday on this quilt later. It's called Birds of a Feather. I started that quilt in 2006, and it was also kind of a month by month pattern series. And I got to about month 4, and it was applique, and it was hard, and I got frustrated, and I put it away. And 15 years later, I got it back out, and I finished it. And so I want to share that story with you, along with how my Aunt Ruby did the same quilt at the same time. And of course, she finished hers in the year that it took, that the patterns came out. But, and talk about her and how she influenced me to start doing this, and just the cool person that she was. So that's what I'm working on Wednesday for right now. Sunday, we have a really pretty show and tell coming up. It was another quilt I gifted this past weekend. The Around the Corner quilt with the hunting theme was a big hit. I didn't actually get to see my nephew open it because we had to head back home, but he did send me a text, and it was a big hit. And so I gifted a quilt to his wife as well, and that's coming up this coming Sunday on What I'm Working on Sunday. Well, I mean, not What I'm Working on Sunday, Show and Tell Sunday. And it was also a big hit, and it's a really pretty soft, neutral colored quilt. So that's all for now. Like and subscribe and follow and share. Thanks for joining me on What I'm Working on Wednesday, and we will see you on Sunday for Show and Tell Sunday on Chorus Girl Quilting. Bye!